Hey guys, so today I'm doing a review on a Costco down quilt, and yeah, that probably sounds pretty crazy, but by the end of this you may be wanting to pick one of these quilts up. They're pretty cool, actually make a great piece of kit for a lot of different uses. But anyways, today's video is going to be a two-part video. In the first part here I will be outlining the quilt, kind of showing you the details of it and why it's cool. And then in the second part of this video, I'll actually show you how to take this quilt and turn it into a 1-pound ultralight summer backpacking quilt that is actually very compact as well. It's pretty cool. The quilt is sold at Costco under the name Double Black Diamond, which I guess is twice as good as Black Diamond. And it's just marketed as a packable down throw, 700 fill power down, and ultralight. As far as dimensions go, this is a 60-inch wide quilt by 70 inches tall. So the width is more than enough for, I would say, almost anybody. It completely covers me and probably overlaps maybe a foot on each side. Now the height is a little different. I'm just under 6 feet, and this quilt is just barely tall enough for me. It probably comes up to my forehead and definitely gives me enough room to seal out the air around my neck. But if you were much taller than 6 feet, I think you would want a longer quilt. And I have seen people that have combined two of these quilts to form a longer one, so that's definitely possible. Now, as you can see here, the baffle construction is sewn through, much like a down jacket. So it's not going to be the warmest quilt in the world, but it does have fairly large loft pockets where the baffles aren't kind of compressing the down. So you can see the average loft of the pockets is around 1.25 inches, but obviously compressing where the seams are. The fabric is a blend of nylon and polyester, and it actually seems like a really nice fabric. It's fairly durable from what I've seen, and it seems to have a really tight weave too. So to me, the real kicker on this quilt is the fact that it's only $20 for a 700 fill down quilt, and a pretty diverse piece of gear at that. So I mean, like I said, you can use it as a summer ultralight backpacking quilt, which I'll show how to make here in a bit. You could use it as a wrap when you're car camping, just for a little extra warmth around camp. Take it to a concert. Because it's so cheap, I mean, you can really do whatever you want with it and not really have to worry too much. And also, that has kind of encouraged a little community of people that are, I mean, I hate the term hacking, but that are turning this quilt into all sorts of different things. I've seen underquilts, top quilts, like you'll see here on the second half of this video, and some other cool things as well. And also, I mean, I would imagine you could turn this into a down jacket if you set the right pattern on it. As I mentioned earlier, it does come with a stuff sack, and it's a pretty decent stuff sack. I mean, it's small enough to be functional backpacking, but it's not so small that you struggle to compress the quilt into it. And as you can see, it's attached to the quilt via a little loop on the quilt, and it secures with the cord lock. And so here you'll see me take the cord lock off, take the bag off the quilt, and then just compress the quilt. It's pretty easy. So when it's all said and done, this quilt comes out to 15.8 ounces or 449 grams. Now while this quilt is great as is, it's really going to shine when we convert it into a backpacking quilt, and that's what part 2 of this video is about. And essentially what that means is we're really just adding a little foot box to the quilt to make it easier to use and a little warmer in the backcountry. So to do this, we're going to need 3/8 inch grosgrain ribbon, and a way to mark the ribbon, a way to cut the ribbon, a lighter to seal the ends of the ribbon, and a measuring tool. You can see here I've got a little grid that I'm using. As you can see here, I am marking out 2-inch segments of ribbon, and I'm marking 11 different segments. So that's going to be 7 segments we're going to use for the bottom of the quilt, and 4 more for the sides of the quilt, and we'll use all of those combined to form the foot box. Now, as you can see, I'm marking the ribbon, cutting it out, and then making sure that I seal the edges of the grosgrain with a lighter so it doesn't unravel on us later. Now, with the first 7 ribbons that I cut, I'm going to space them 2 baffles apart on the bottom narrow side of the quilt. So this is the 60-inch side, not the 70-inch side, or if you're counting the baffles, this is the 12 baffle side, not the 14. And essentially I started the corner here, and you can see the little loop on the left side of the quilt. That's where they attach the stuff sack at, and you want to keep it within this orientation so you can use it if you need to still. And as you can see, I space out the grosgrain every second baffle all the way across the bottom side of the quilt and to the other side. Now with these, we're going to take the grosgrain and fold it in half and then put a good crease in it just to keep it there so you can accurately have a halfway mark to help you when you're sewing. So I just do this and then head to the sewing machine and basically just attach these little pieces of grosgrain on both sides of the fabric with a couple rows of stitching back and forth to lock it in. So as you can see here, you take the half piece of grosgrain, put one under, one on top, and then you're just going to stitch right on top of that to hold it in place. So let's go ahead and jump to the sewing machine. Now, this is a fairly easy process. I mean, you're just doing a bunch of tack stitches essentially, and you're going to do that for all 7 on the bottom side of the quilt. This is what it should look like. Then you're going to count 1 baffle, skip it, go to the next one. And 7 ribbons later, you've got a corner. So this is what it'll look like once all the grosgrain ribbons are on the bottom of your quilt. And next step is going to be adding 2 more on each side, the left and the right side, 1 square up and 3 squares up from the bottom of the quilt. So you can see here, this is the very bottom right corner. 1 baffle up, I'm putting another grosgrain the same way that I did with the bottom ones. And then 3 baffles up, I'm putting 1 more there, just to make a nice little deep foot box to keep your feet from falling out in the night. And this is what it looks like all said and done. So to actually form the foot box, you're going to need 2 things: a 3-foot length of really narrow string or cord, whatever you can find, and a little cord lock to put on it. Now on one end of the 3-foot string, I put a loop, as you can see here, and I'm just sealing the end of the rope to make sure it doesn't unravel. And this loop is big enough to fit the little cord lock through it, but not much bigger than that. So you can see I have this cord lock on the other side of the cord, and I want it to be able to fit through this loop and act as a sort of toggle, and that's what's going to keep the foot box from unraveling once you do cinch it together. So you don't want it, you want the loop just narrow enough to let the cord lock pass through, but still narrow enough that it's going to stop it from coming back through the other way. Just like this. Now I'll show you how to actually use this cord and the cord lock to form the foot box. For the first step, you're going to take all of the little grosgrain loops that you sewed on the bottom of the quilt, not on the sides, and you're going to feed the knotted end of the rope through these little loops. And I'll zoom in here to give you a better idea of what I'm doing. But essentially I'm just taking the knot, feeding it through the loop, the grosgrain loop at the bottom of the quilt. And once you have all 7 of those, you're going to take the loop in the rope, and like I showed earlier, you're going to feed the cord lock through that loop to form a sort of toggle. And that's going to keep this foot box from unraveling. Then you just tighten it up to get all the grosgrain ribbons together, and you've got the start of a foot box. Now with the slack of this cord, you're going to actually move up to the top, or to the ribbons on the side of the quilt, and tie them together as well. So for the ones 1 baffle in, tie those together with a whatever knot you prefer, it doesn't really matter. And with the slack from that knot, you tie the next 2 that are 3 baffles up together. You want to do these a little more securely because that's where most of the pressure is going to be when you move around. And you can see there, these are tight, and you've got a semi-foot box formed, or a full foot box actually. So this is what it looks like getting in and out of the quilt. Now obviously this isn't the tightest foot box. If it gets too drafty, you can stick a pair of socks in there. But I mean, for a summer quilt, you really don't need a bomb-proof foot box, especially around 50 degrees. Now, I have seen some people do some sewn-in foot box designs on this quilt, and they work really well, but my intent with this build was to build a quilt, or to modify this quilt in a way where I could use it versatilely. So I could use this completely spread out as a quilt on my bed, or I can cinch it up, form a foot box, and take it into the backcountry. So it just keeps it a little more versatile and usable in multiple ways. So as you can see here, there's plenty of width on this quilt. Especially if you're a side sleeper or larger person, you're not going to struggle with the width. The height on it is limited. It definitely, I mean, it comes up to around my nose, so it's more than enough to seal off my shoulders and keep me warm. But as I said earlier, for taller people, it's not ideal. Here are some finished pics of the quilt. You can see it folds up fairly nicely. Definitely looks legit. And after restuffing the quilt, you can see it is still a really tiny package, perfect for fast and light trips in the summer. Weight, after all modifications, comes out to 15.9 ounces or 452 grams, so still under a pound, which is amazing. And once again, with that versatility, you can do other cool things like capes and, well, mostly just capes. Well, I hope you found this useful, and as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, I could use your help in supporting videos, keeping stuff like this coming. If you check out my Patreon link in the top left there, you'll find a place where you can support this content and continue to encourage me to make more. In addition, I've got other DIY type videos like this of all sorts and types. You can check out a playlist on the top right there. And if you like what you see, maybe consider subscribing. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.